One father's clumsy recipes filled his daughter's heart with love. He burned more dinners than he cooked right. But sometimes love doesn't wear an apron neatly tied or taste like perfection. Sometimes it's clumsy hands, smoke-filled kitchens, and a father who tried anyway. This is the story of how one man's crooked recipes became the sweetest memories of his daughter's life. The first time the smoke alarm went off, Emma laughed so hard milk spilled out of her nose. Her father, Daniel, stood in the middle of the kitchen, fanning the air with a dish towel while a blackened pancake clung stubbornly to the pan. "Breakfast is slightly delayed," he announced, coughing through the haze. Emma, 8 years old with a gap-toothed grin, clapped her hands anyway. "That's okay, Daddy, we can eat it crispy," Daniel sighed, wiping sweat from his forehead. Crispy is one word for it. The truth was, cooking terrified him. Since his wife Anna passed away 3 years earlier, Daniel had avoided the kitchen whenever he could. He lived on takeout, frozen meals, and vending machine coffee. But Emma deserved better. She deserved warmth, home, and meals made with love. So he tried. Badly. Awkwardly. But he tried. That morning, as they sat at the table with charred pancakes drowned in syrup, Emma leaned over and whispered, "These taste like hugs." Daniel blinked back tears. Maybe he wasn't failing after all. Their kitchen was small, tucked into the corner of a creaky apartment with peeling wallpaper and a single flickering light bulb. Still, to Emma, it felt like the center of the universe. Most nights, Daniel came home from his night shift job at the post office with tired eyes and aching shoulders. But no matter how heavy his steps, he always paused at the kitchen doorway, pulling on an apron Emma had decorated with messy, painted handprints. "Ready for tonight's masterpiece?" he'd ask. Emma would nod eagerly, climbing onto the stool by the counter where flour, spices, and cans were spread out like treasures. She wasn't expecting perfection. She just wanted time with her dad. That night they attempted spaghetti. The noodles clumped together, the sauce scorched, and somehow the garlic bread ended up soggy and burnt at the same time. But Emma slurped a tangled forkful, eyes shining. "Better than the restaurant," she declared. Daniel chuckled. He knew she was lying. But hearing those words, even if they were stretched thin, wrapped around his tired heart like a warm blanket. At school, Emma's friends bragged about their mother's lasagna, birthday cakes with perfect frosting, and Thanksgiving dinners laid out like magazine spreads. Emma stayed quiet. She didn't have those, but she had something else. When the teacher asked the class to share their favorite family recipe, Emma raised her hand shyly. "My dad makes pancakes with smiley faces," the teacher smiled. "What's in them?" Emma paused. "Love and too much baking soda sometimes." The class laughed, but Emma's cheeks glowed with pride. That afternoon, she ran home to tell Daniel. They laughed, Daddy, but in a good way. Daniel ruffled her hair, heart aching with both pride and guilt. He wanted to give her more. Real recipes, polished meals, traditions she could boast about. Instead, all he had were messy attempts and late-night experiments. But when Emma placed a sticky note on the fridge that read, "World's best pancake chef, Daddy," he realized maybe he was building a tradition after all. One clumsy dish at a time. There were nights when exhaustion nearly won. Daniel would drop onto the couch, shoes still on, staring at the ceiling while Emma tugged his sleeve. "Come on, Daddy. We have to cook." He'd groan. "How about pizza delivery tonight?" Emma shook her head firmly. "No. We promised Mommy we'd cook together." Her words hit him like a stone. She barely remembered Anna, but she clung to the fragments, stories, photos, the way Daniel described her laugh. Emma believed cooking kept her mother's spirit alive, so Daniel pushed himself up even if his legs trembled. They would burn another batch of rice over salt soup or forget half the ingredients. But they did it together. And each time Emma would declare, "Mommy would be proud." Daniel wasn't sure. But those words carried him, like small lanterns lighting a dark road. One rainy evening, thunder rattled the windows as Daniel wrestled with a meatloaf recipe. The oven smoked, the loaf collapsed, and Emma giggled so hard she fell off her chair. "Emergency plan?" Daniel asked. "Grilled cheese," she shouted. They buttered bread together, cheese slipping onto the floor, crumbs scattering across the counter. The storm roared outside, but the kitchen glowed with laughter and warmth. Halfway through their meal, the power flickered out. The apartment fell silent except for the rain. Emma leaned against Daniel, holding her sandwich like treasure. It tastes better in the dark, she whispered. Daniel kissed the top of her head. For the first time in a long while, he wasn't afraid of the silence. The grocery store was another battlefield. Daniel wandered aisles clueless, squinting at labels. What was the difference between parsley and cilantro? Why did flour come in so many kinds? Emma pushed the cart, proudly pointing. We need this one. She wasn't always right, but Daniel pretended she was. At the checkout, their cart was modest. Pasta, bread, eggs, a single pack of chicken. Daniel counted bills twice, stretching every dollar. He skipped his coffee for the week so Emma could have strawberries. As they walked home with paper bags cutting into his palms, Emma skipped beside him. One day, Daddy, I'll cook for you. He smiled, hiding his worry about rent, bills, and the mountain of responsibility pressing on him. I look forward to it, Chef. Emma squeezed his hand. That squeeze reminded him. He wasn't carrying the weight alone. Emma's 10th birthday arrived with no balloons, no fancy party, no bakery cake. Just Daniel, a dollar store banner, and a kitchen that smelled faintly of burnt sugar. He had attempted a cake. It collapsed in the middle, frosting dripping down like melting snow. He cursed under his breath, ready to toss it, but Emma gasped. It's beautiful. Sweetheart, it's a disaster. She shook her head, sticking candles into the uneven surface. It's perfect because you made it. When she blew out the candles, the room filled with a quiet magic. Not because the cake looked good, it didn't, but because Emma's wish was simple. For Daddy to always try. Daniel hugged her tightly, whispering, always, Emma, always. As years passed, Emma grew taller, her handwriting neater, her laughter softer but deeper. Daniel's recipes didn't improve much, but something else did. The bond between them. One evening, Emma brought home a school assignment. Write about a hero. She wrote about Daniel. She described his clumsy cooking, his tired eyes, his way of never giving up. She wrote about pancakes that tasted like hugs and grilled cheese that felt like safety. She wrote about how love mattered more than flavor. When Daniel read it, his hands trembled. Tears blurred the words. I'm not a hero, he whispered. Emma leaned against him. You are to me. Those words filled the cracks in him that no recipe could ever fix. Teenage years brought distance. Emma stayed longer in her room, earbuds in, while Daniel sat alone at the kitchen table staring at burned toast. He feared he was losing her. The apron hung untouched. Meals grew quieter. But one Saturday he smelled something from the kitchen. Warm, rich, not burnt. He peeked in. Emma, now 15, stood at the stove, apron tied, stirring sauce with careful patience. Thought I'd try your recipe, she said with a teasing grin.
Daniel laughed, stepping closer. My recipe? That smells edible. They ate together, and for the first time Emma fed him a bite. See, Daddy? I told you I'd cook for you one day. It wasn't just a meal. It was a reminder she hadn't drifted away. She was carrying him forward. When Emma left for college, the kitchen felt hollow. The apron still hung untouched. Daniel cooked alone now, fumbling less but missing the sound of her laughter. On her first visit home, she insisted they cook together again. This time she led, guiding his hands, correcting his mistakes gently. You still add too much salt, she teased. Some traditions never die, he replied. They ate late into the night, stories flowing like wine. Emma told him about classes, friends, and dreams. Daniel listened, his chest swelling with pride. In her eyes he saw traces of Anna. In her smile he saw the years of laughter that had carried them through. Years rolled by. Daniel's hair grayed, his hands stiffened. Cooking became harder, but Emma never let him stop. One Thanksgiving, she brought home her fiancé, Ben. The turkey was overcooked, the potatoes lumpy. But when Ben complimented the meal, Emma winked at her dad. Your tradition, she said. Daniel laughed, his heart full. His clumsy cooking had become their heritage, a symbol of love, resilience, and family stitched together through burnt edges and messy flavors on Emma's wedding day. Daniel stood in the kitchen early, apron tied, determined to make breakfast for his little girl one last time before she became someone's wife. He burned the eggs, spilled coffee, and forgot the toast in the oven. Emma walked in, dress half-buttoned, laughing at the chaos. Daddy, she said, hugging him from behind, this is perfect. Tears slipped down Daniel's cheeks. He realized then it was never about the food. It was about the love that filled the space between smoke and laughter. Years later, Daniel sat in a quiet nursing home room. His hands trembled too much to cook anymore, but every Sunday Emma visited with her children. Together, they set up a small electric skillet and made pancakes. The smoke alarm still went off sometimes, and the kids laughed just like she once had. Daniel closed his eyes, listening to the laughter, the sizzle of batter, the sound of family carrying on the tradition he had started. One spring morning, Daniel passed away peacefully, the smell of pancakes lingering in the air. At his funeral, Emma spoke through tears. She didn't mention achievements, money, or success. She spoke of burnt toast, broken spatulas, laughter through smoke, and the way her father's love had fed her more than food ever could. "He taught me that the recipe doesn't matter," she said, voice trembling. "It's the love you stir into it." Years later, Emma stood in her own kitchen, her children around her, apron covered in flour, the pancakes flipped unevenly. The sauce simmered too long. The smoke alarm beeped. Her children giggled and she laughed too, realizing she had become her father. She whispered to the air, to the memory of Daniel, "You were right, Daddy. These taste like hugs," and just like that his love lived on, one clumsy recipe at a time. Sometimes the greatest meals aren't perfect. They're burnt, messy, and unforgettable. Daniel's recipes left no cookbook, but they filled a heart forever. If this story touched you, please subscribe, like, and press the bell icon. Because love, like stories, is meant to be shared.